Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of the latest hiking news in New Hampshire with your host, me, Taylor the Nahamsha hiker. I like to try to get these videos out first thing Friday morning so you can have your weather updates and trail conditions and the latest hiking news going into the weekend where most people are hiking. But I fell a little bit behind when I hosted my first ever live virtual shopping event on Thursday night from my gift shop. I went live on my other channel, Taylor at Nahamsha Gifts, for about an hour and a half, and I was packaging online orders live, and it was such a fun event. A ton of you were able to do your holiday shopping, and thank you to everyone who joined. I spent the whole weekend packaging up all the online orders and getting them all ready to get shipped out today. So it was very successful. I'm probably gonna do it one more time before Christmas. So if you don't want to miss it, you can subscribe to my other channel and I will let you guys know when that's happening. But anyways, in this episode, we have a few things to chat about. I know it's Monday and a lot of people probably hiked over the weekend, but I still want to go over the weather conditions and trail conditions in case anyone's hiking anytime soon. Fall is basically over and it's now winter up in the White Mountains. The peaks are covered in snow. So I feel like we have to chat about that and give some updates. There's also a extremely sad story that happened up in the Whites on, Friday night, I think. Friday night into Saturday morning. And I'm going to read the press release for you, and that's going to be in the search and rescue segment of this video. We're also going to chat a little bit about the Appalachian Trail. I typically want to keep these videos centered around New Hampshire and New Hampshire hiking news, but I know a lot of my audience are big fans of the Appalachian Trail, so I want to chat a little bit about the AT and the post-Hurricane Helene damage and if through hiking is even possible next year in 2025, because I know there's been some questions about that. And yeah, just a few more updates. So let's get into it. So we're gonna start off with the weather on top of Mount Washington right now. It is in and out of the clouds, very typical for the summit of Mount Washington. The highs are in the upper 20s. It is windy. Again, very typical. The wind is 60 to 80 miles an hour with gusts up to 90, and the wind chill is 10 below to 20 below. And I was on the Mount Washington website earlier just looking around at all the information they have, and I saw that the average temperature on the summit of Mount Washington in November is 20 degrees. So it is cold up there. Mount Washington is very high in elevation, very exposed, and the weather is just crazy. So I always like to give my Mount Washington summit weather update for you. So I have two different trail condition reports that I want to go over real quick. I like reading these so I can kind of see what hikers are experiencing on different trails certain days, so I can just have an idea of what the conditions are like. And the two that I want to feature today are both from hikers who decided to turn around because the conditions weren't great or weren't safe, and there were just a lot of factors that made it safer to just turn around and bail on their original plans. And I want to go over these because of this new hashtag that I've been loving, hashtag safety over summits. I was also chatting with a couple of you guys about putting safety over summits on a t-shirt, and the money that I raised from the sales of that shirt, I could donate to a certain search and rescue organization. Safety over summits is something that I really resonate with because I always put my safety first over reaching the summit of a mountain, because I know the mountain's always going to be there and I always put safety as my top priority. So that's just a little idea that I had. So this first trail condition report is from a hiker that went up Mount Impface and the Carters, Middle and South Carter. They reported that there was no snow at the low elevations, but 10 inches up on the ridge, and there were snow drifts. They mentioned that there were heavy bent over iced trees that were blocking the trail, so they had to climb up and over them. They ended up turning around at a steep ledge between Middle and South Carter because they were unable to navigate it with their micro spikes. And they said snowshoes would have made their day a lot easier. I do often see people in the Facebook groups asking if they need snowshoes on certain hikes on certain days. Coming from someone who has had to turn around on a hike way too many times because they didn't pack snowshoes. I always recommend it if you're not sure, because yes, there might not be any snow at the parking lot, but the further up the mountain you get, the more snow you're going to see this time of year, and snowshoes can definitely make or break your hike. The second trail condition report comes from the Kinsman Trail. Again, they said that there was no snow for the first half mile of a hike, and then it started to accumulate when they got further up in elevation, about 2 to 3 inches. The snow was very wet and sticky. The water crossings were fine, they were rock hoppable, but at one point of the hike, the snow depth became too much because they also didn't have snowshoes. And they also said spikes would have been tough because of the consistency of the snow. So after about 2.5 miles, they decided to turn around and head back to the car. I also want to mention that this time of year, a lot of the seasonal roads in the Whites start to close when there starts to be some snow because some of these roads aren't maintained. And that's something I had to learn the hard way when I first started off hiking. I didn't even think to look that up. So I just want to remind you to take that one extra step when you're planning a hike this time of year to check to see if the road that the trailhead is on is open. And there's a couple different ways you can check for this information. I know trailsnh.com/roads might have some information, and also the Forest Service puts out information. I think I saw it on their Facebook page, what roads were open and what roads were closed. All right, now we'll chat a little bit about the Appalachian Trail and if hikers can actually hike the trail next year. And I believe the answer is yes, but according to what I was reading and researching online, hikers might have to be a little flexible with their plans, because I believe that there are still sections of the AT that are closed because of the damage after Hurricane Helene. There is a 65-mile stretch of trail right now around Irwin, Tennessee, a little bit south of it and a little bit north, that is closed. I also want to mention that the bridge near Irwin, Tennessee is closed, and from what I've read, that could take years to rebuild. That was a massive bridge. So to even road walk around that part of the AT, it's about 5 miles. So not awful, but I believe hikers are gonna have to do that road walk, or I read that there are some services that will offer shuttles around that bridge, around that part of the AT. Registration is open on the ATC's website for 2025. Now, registering for your thru hike isn't mandatory, but it is strongly encouraged, because when you register with your specific start date, you can see how many other hikers are also registered that date. That way you can make sure that your start date isn't too crowded, so it won't overcrowd the shelters and the hikers can more space out their start dates. I think that's just important for the trail, that we don't have hundreds of people starting the AT on a certain date, because the overcrowding at the shelters and the campsites and the hostels, I just can't imagine that would be a great experience. So you can see when other hikers are registered and plan your hike that way. Also, when you register, then the ATC also has your phone number and email. That way, if there's any important alerts that they need to get out to you, if there's any emergency, dangerous people on the trail, wildfires, trail closures, because that stuff happens. I've been notified for all of those different things. They can get that information out to you as soon as they can. Also, for anyone thinking of thru hiking next year, or really just doing any sort of hiking in general, I can't recommend Element enough for your source of electrolytes. Element is an electrolyte drink mix without any dodgy ingredients and without any sugar that can be commonly found in other sports electrolyte drinks. Just by drinking 1 stick of Element, this science-backed formula of the sodium, potassium, and magnesium can help alleviate a lot of the common symptoms of dehydration, which can include muscle fatigue, cramps, weakness, low energy. Plus, it's so fun to drink Element because it tastes so good. I am having the raspberry salt right now. And if you head to drinkelement.com/Nahamsha and you place any order on the website, you'll get a free sample pack with 8 sticks of Element, all with different flavors to try. If you're placing your first order with Element and you're not sure what flavor to get, I recommend the raspberry salt or the citrus salt. Again, that's drinklmnt.com/Nahamsha, and thanks for sponsoring this video. Now, this search and rescue story is incredibly sad, and as soon as I saw it online, I didn't know if I wanted to talk about it just because it was so sad and it just like hit me so hard. But I'm going to share it with you. I know every story has a lesson. Now, for the stories I've gone over in the past, I've read the press releases and I've just told you the story in my own words. But I'm going to read this press release word for word just so I don't forget anything or mess up any of the details, just because it is a very sensitive story. And I just want to give this hiker the respect of just making sure what I tell you is correct. So on Friday evening, November 22nd at 6:30 p.m., New Hampshire Fish and Game conservation officers were made aware of an overdue hiker from the Coppermine Trail area in Franconia. The hiker had departed earlier in the day and had planned a hike to the area of the Middle Cannonball up through the Coppermine Brook Valley to check conditions of a ski glade prior to the winter skiing season. Around 4 p.m., the man communicated to his wife that he was okay and on his way back out. When the man did not return home in a reasonable time frame, she called for assistance. Franconia police located the hiker's vehicle at the Coppermine Road off Route 116 in Franconia. Conservation officers from New Hampshire Fish and Game also responded to the trailhead. Having a rough idea of the intended route, conservation officers started up the trail a little after 9 p.m. The area needing to be searched was primarily off-trail and required bushwhacking through thick vegetation while wintry conditions were present. Just prior to 1 a.m., while ascending the edges of a steep iced-over slide, the body of a missing man was located around 2,800 feet in elevation. More conservation officers and volunteers from Pemi Valley Search and Rescue Team were called to assist with the recovery effort. In all, 22 rescuers took part in the rescue. By 5:30 a.m., additional rescuers had searched the scene and were able to start the 3.2-mile carryout to Coppermine Road. The rescue party reached the trailhead just prior to 9 a.m. and were met by the assistant medical examiner. It was apparent the man had suffered a significant fall in icy terrain. He was wearing micro spikes and was well equipped with equipment for a hike. An autopsy is planned. Now, it is so sad to read this. This was an avid hiker, an experienced hiker, someone who has hiked in the White Mountains in all 4 seasons. So it kind of hits home. He's a local. He lived in the White Mountains. He's young, 44 years old. And the first thing I did was put myself in his wife's shoes, because he had communicated with her that he was safe and he was on his way back to his car. And for her to think that he's on his way home and just not show up and have to call the police because he said he was going to be home at a certain time and he wasn't, that must feel so scary. And I put myself in her shoes, but then I also put myself in my husband's shoes if that ever were to have to happen to him. And it scares me so bad because he was experienced, he was prepared, he had on his spikes, and just things can happen. I don't know, one wrong step and you fall down and you're by yourself. And yeah, sometimes just these freak things happen and you just never know. I do want to just thank everyone involved with this, the Franconia Police, the New Hampshire Conservation Officers, the Pemi Valley Search and Rescue Team. Like I said, it was 22 people that helped with this recovery throughout the night in these very harsh wintry conditions, bushwhacking to get to him, because I was looking at a map. I don't believe he was on a well-established trail or trail at all to get to where he was going. So that must have been tough. So huge shout out to everyone who helped with that. And just, I'm thinking of his family during this time, the holiday season. I know it's Thanksgiving week. It's going to be tough. So just thoughts and prayers to his family. After these search and rescue stories, I do want to follow them up with a hiking tip. And this is something that he did that is good, that I need to get better of doing myself. And that is leaving your hiking plans with someone to check in, to give them updates. I do a lot of my hikes by myself on a whim, and sometimes I'm not good about letting my husband know exactly where I am, but that's something I'm going to work on. Every time I go for a hike, I'm going to text him where I'm parking, what trail I'm doing, what time I should be done, and just give as many updates as I can, because I believe this guy's wife realized pretty quickly that he didn't return back when he said he was going to. So she was on top of it, and she was able to call the police soon to get help. All right, we're gonna move on past that story for a little bit. The video's almost over. I do typically like to put a gear section in these videos. I'm not gonna do that today. I am probably going to have a dedicated video just for hiking gear coming out later this week, because I want to mention a ton of Black Friday deals that are going to be going on. So be on the lookout for that. I have one hiker submission for this week from Gary Stopka, who hiked Cannon Mountain. So I'm going to show you some of the pictures from his trip, because it seemed like a very beautiful day. And I don't have anything for you guys for the Q&A section. I was looking through the comments of the last video. I didn't really see any questions. I actually did see one person asking how the baby's doing, and the baby's great. Super cute, super fun, 5 months old, laughs a lot, smiles at everyone she meets. So she's precious. I haven't been hiking myself. I'm actually kind of going through a bit of a toe injury right now. So even just wearing sneakers at this point has been painful. So I haven't been on a hike myself in a couple weeks. So no hike of the week for you right now, but I should be out there soon. It's hard for me to finish this video after telling that story, honestly, but I'm gonna wrap it up right now. I will see you in my next video. Stay safe out there.